Hey everyone, welcome to the Chainsaw Man Anime Review, Episode 1. This is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, back to hit you with another video. Now, to say that I am excited for this anime would be an understatement. Usually, ever since I've really gotten into watching anime and reading manga on a more consistent basis, I typically wait for an anime to complete a certain season before I binge watch it in its entirety, and I was the type of person that used to watch anime in its dubbed form, and I usually avoided the sub at all costs. But after getting into a few animes, some that only had subs, so I had to go through that way, I've made more of an exception, usually for shows that I really like. For example, with a show like Boruto or with Spy X Family, I usually just watch it as it comes out in its sub form. And for other animes, such as the slice of life or the rom-coms like Don't Toy With Me Miss Nagatoro or Komi Can't Communicate and shows like that, I can binge it in its sub form, so I usually are lenient in that regard, but I usually do come back and watch the dub later if the show gets a dubbed version. But for Chainsaw Man, I had to make the exception, and I had to watch it when it came out. It came out today, first episode, and to say that I have been impressed would be an understatement. But we're going to get into that in this review. Now, before we get started, there are a few things I do want to say about how this review is going to be. I'm going to use still images of the anime itself, and I'm only going to keep them on screen briefly. I'm not going to use any moving animation simply because, with a studio like MAPPA, you want to try to avoid copyright and all that good stuff, because there have been a lot of channels that have done anime reviews that have gotten shut down, for obvious reasons. And while some companies can be a little more lenient than others, since my channel is pretty new right now, although it is gaining traction, I want to try to avoid that. So I'll try to use some images from the anime when possible, but for the most part, what you see now is mainly going to be how I'll be telling the story or how I'll be doing the review. Now, as we go into Chainsaw Man, as we will be doing the review of the anime, I'm going to go on the assumption that people haven't read the manga. Personally, I have read the manga. I've read the first part of Chainsaw Man and the second part that started over the summer that's going on right now. I'm currently reading that as well. But I am going to take into account those who are anime onlys. So I'm not going to spoil too much. I will give some hints here and there, but I'm not going to spoil anything for those who only watch the anime. So anyway, what is the Chainsaw Man world or universe, or how does it work? Well, the story takes place in a dystopic kind of future. It's technically in the 90s of this time period, where things took a bit of a crazy turn during the events of World War I and II. Essentially, the world is set where there are devils who exist and they are born from the fear of humans. So if you think about Jujutsu Kaisen, which is something that this type of power is sort of compared to, with how the cursed spirits are born from the various fears and the hatreds of humans and they manifest into physical form. That's similar for the devils. So essentially anything that can be feared can become a devil in some way, shape, or form if there's enough fear for it. And as you'll see from the first episode, you'll see that just about anything can be given form if there's really enough fear for it. So you have the devils who are dangerous and malevolent spirits who pretty much exist in two different worlds. There's hell and then there's earth. Now, the thing about it is that they live in this weird cycle of existence where every time they die, they pretty much get respawned in the opposite world. So, for example, if a devil is killed in hell, it will respawn on earth. If the devil is killed on earth, it will respawn in hell. Now, there are devils that are known as the primal fears. These are devils that have never been killed, so they have never been on earth before. Which, if you think about how often a devil gets killed, even the more powerful ones, and how they reincarnate and go back and forth, you have to think about how strong these devils have to be if they've never been to Earth in the first place. It means they've been strong enough to survive for as long as they have. And also, you do have the abilities of humans who can form contracts with these devils in order to be able to use their powers, and some are under the employment of being known as devil hunters, who essentially use their powers from contracted devils to hunt various other devils or other type of beings. Also, you do have another subcategory for devil that is fiend, which is essentially what happens when a devil takes over a human corpse or a human body. But as you'll see in this review, Denji, our main character, is going to be the exception to the rule. So Denji is a young human who is pretty much in poverty. One thing to note is that with Denji as a character, I think he's going to be one of the more standout anime protagonists that we will have in this current era of anime. At least a lot more different than the ones that we've seen in the past. While most are typically the kind that shout out their goals and their dreams, or there's this overarching type of quest that they're trying to achieve, we'll see that with a character like Denji, he doesn't actually have anything like that, but instead his goals are pretty basic to say the least. But anyway, this episode pretty much covers the first chapter of Chainsaw Man. Episode 1 covers all of Chapter 1 of Volume 1. And I'll talk about it a little bit later when it comes to pace. So basically, this is just a good appetizer to kind of get you caught up to understand this world. And you understand Denji a lot better. He is a young man who is grown up in poverty. He pretty much inherited mountains of debt from his deadbeat father, who took his own life because he pretty much didn't want to do it anymore. And the Yakuza, since someone has to pay the debt pretty much rolled over to Denji. We see from a young age, Denji has never really had much of a choice about anything in his life, pretty much following the whims of everyone who's had power over him. And we also see how the bond between him and the devil that he works with was formed, that being in the form of a dog named Pochita, who has a chainsaw sticking out of his head and the ripcord being his tail, and Denji pretty much swings him around like a chainsaw. Denji, his life, it is pretty much awful. Pretty much the worst of the worst, and the fact that he can try to make the best of a bad situation is pretty much one of the bigger endearing qualities that I've truly loved about Denji, mainly because I can say for myself, and not that I've grown up in, true poverty, like I've never been so bad off that I never had a roof over my head, but I definitely know what it's like to struggle in a lot of different ways. So it really does build that sort of connection, at least with me personally, seeing, how Denji's live, knowing that sometimes when you want to have something to eat, you don't get to have the best of the best. Sometimes you're just lucky to even have some form of meal that day at all. I mean, it's so bad for Denji and Pochita that the only thing they can do is share a piece of sliced bread, and they're lucky if they can even get some butter on it. Like, that's really just how bad it is. Can't even afford a loaf of bread. They can only afford a slice of bread. And you just see how in much of a rut that Denji's situation is, because for starters, he's pretty much tried to exhaust every way to make as much money as possible. Using Pochita, he cuts down trees, and that earns him about 60,000 yen a month. He also sold his kidney at some point in time for 1.2 million yen. He sold his right eye for 300,000 yen. Sold one of his freaking balls for 100,000 yen or so, because he can't really remember. And yet he still owes over 38,120,000 yen. And that's just insane. And we also see that he does work as a devil hunter for the Yakuza, who take the corpses of the dead devils that they get and sell them on the black market. The reason being is that Japan actually has a special task force that hunts down devils also, but you don't get to sell the bodies. So having their own devil hunter for hire, as it will, they're pretty much able to take the bodies and sell them and make a good fortune. And a dead devil is worth around 300,000 yen. However, the problem for Denji is that even for as much work as he's able to do, you kind of see just how much of in a rut he truly is, because even when Denji does a good job, the boss pretty much adds all these things like the finder fee or like the body removal fee. And it's pretty much one of those situations where for every step forward Denji takes, it's not just taking 2 steps back, he's taken 100 steps back. And you pretty much see that even though Denji, maybe he's aware of it and he maybe just doesn't say anything, if he's not aware, then it's pretty much one of those situations where the Yakuza are pretty much just taking advantage of him and basically keeping him in an endless cycle where no matter how much money he accumulates, no matter how much of the debt he pays off, they're pretty much just going to keep him on the leash for the rest of his life. And the leader of the Yakuza pretty much refers to Denji as a dog, a loyal dog, every chance he gets. And Denji pretty much, he's just doing anything he can to survive, even so much to the point where he swallows a cigarette for 100 yen. Although he does spit it back out, so it shows that he's not completely stupid. But still though, in the end of the day, you see just how bad off of a life that he's lived. And for Denji, for the life that he wants, for him and Pochita, they don't want the extravagant life or anything great like that. Denji, he talks about his dreams and something like that that I can relate to, being where I am right now in my life, you know, thinking, looking up at the ceiling at night, thinking about how your life could be different, about how things could be better. You know, that's something that personally for me, that's something I can relate to, and I think it's a lot of people can relate to, mainly because we've all been there. We've all wanted to have the dream of living a different kind of life if possible. If we maybe didn't come up from the best of circumstances, we want to try to get to a better place. And for Denji, it's never about being wealthy. It's not about being famous. It's not about having all the money. I mean, for Denji, if he could work a regular job, make a decent living for himself, and that's really all he would want for him and Pochita, that's truly just shows that for a lot of people, it's about appreciating what you have. And I know that's not the only theme of the show. There are definitely a lot more themes I'll be touched on. I just think that for the first episode, you kind of get that understanding. Because in a lot of ways, a lot of people, you don't really want for much. For most people, it's just about having the basics of life, just being able to take care of yourself, take care of your responsibilities, and just be able to live normally. That's really all that any one of us could want, and it's all that Denji wants. And you really see that in the end, that's really the goal that he's striving for. So anyway, as the episode continues, we see Denji fighting one of the aforementioned devils, that being the Tomato Devil. And again, this just goes to show you how absurd a lot of these devils can be, but even still, you would have to think that anything could be made of fear. And when I say anything, I mean anything. From something as powerful as a gun, guns that are something that are especially feared throughout the world. So things like guns, weapons, and you'll see that as the story progresses, those things are obviously going to have powerful devils. But even stuff that's weak, stuff that you might think is laughable to be afraid of, there are things that could pretty much take form. If you remember from the Mori show, the woman that was afraid of olives, that had a genuine fear of olives, if enough people have that fear, there could literally be the olive devil that's formed from the fear of olives. And that might pretty much be the stuff of nightmares, because I'm not even gonna lie, I don't even like the look of olives all that much myself. But either way, we see that these are the type of things that Denji has to fight and has to go through. So in episode 1, we also see the unfortunate side of this world, and that is that in this world, a lot of things are messed up. And more often than not, if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. And I will say that for this anime, a lot like, and I know people are going to compare it a lot, but I don't think they're the same. I would say in terms of tone, I'm definitely getting a lot of Jujutsu Kaisen vibes. And what I mean by that is, this is a type of anime where you're going to fall in love with these characters. You are. You're going to fall in love with these characters. There are going to be characters who you're going to relate to, who you're going to gravitate towards, people who you're really going to like, and they're going to die. Like, no one is safe in this show at all. If you read the manga, you already know. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but I will say this. If you think anyone is safe, no one is safe at all. No one. Anyone can get it. Anyone can go at any time. And that's the type of vibe this show is going to be on. So I'm just saying that in advance. If there's any character who you really get attached to, who you really like, just know that at any moment, they can be out of here. They can be out of this world. But anyway, later on, as the show continues, the Yakuza boss calls Denji late at night, tells him that they have a job to do, and that they have a devil to hunt. So Denji wakes up Pochita, and they go to hunt the devil. They also hint at Denji's heart having a medical issue, because Denji comments that his mother died from a heart disease, and that night he was coughing up blood. So you see that he's probably not too long for this world anyway. So anyway, they go to an abandoned warehouse. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Denji trying to figure out where this devil is that he has to fight and kill. And the Yakuza boss and his goons pretty much jump him and stab him, and pretty much inform him that for all of his service and everything that he's done, he's pretty much outlived his usefulness, and now they're just going to kill him off. And what we end up seeing is our first, like, more powerful devil, that being the zombie devil. That's pretty much, you could say, is a fear of the undead and of the zombies. And basically, the Yakuza boss and all of his goons, they wanted more power. They wanted to have the power of the devils. So because of that, they pretty much sold themselves off to the zombie devil to gain power, but they're basically under his control, and they're all pretty much zombies. And Denji, who's been injured, along with Pochita, the reason why they were lured into the trap is because the zombie devil pretty much wants to kill off all of the devil hunters, mainly because the devils know that the devil hunters are after them. So this was his way of trying to take the fight to the various devil hunters, and they pretty much sold Denji to be the first one to get got. And I will say that this scene in particular, even though I read it in the manga, and I'm not gonna lie, it was gruesome, I will say this just does it justice in the form of being very unsettling, unnerving. The voice actor for Denji did an amazing job portraying the pain, the guttural screaming. Because what the zombie devil does is basically all of the Yakuza who are now under his control, he pretty much has an army of zombies with knives, machetes, blades. They chase Denji down in this warehouse. And like you see Denji, he's already been injured. He's trying to run away. He's trying to escape. And you see the zombies closing in on him. And one takes a machete and just slashes him in the back. And it causes him to fall to the ground. He gets swarmed. And they just butcher him. And I mean, I've seen a lot of a lot of gory, action in anime. I've seen brutal stuff, but I mean, for some reason, this scene being animated, it stuck out to me because the voice acting, because of the tone, the darkness of the colors, and just the way he sounds so desperate trying to escape. And he reaches out his hand to try to claw away, and they stab his hand into the ground. And the title of the story, of the first episode, is The Chainsaw and the Dog. And Denji is referred to as a dog. And there was a lot of focus, the emphasis on the dog in this series. And the thing about a dog is, a lot of times, the loyalty of a dog is taken for granted. One episode I think a lot of people like in Futurama is the Futurama episode where we see Fry, and we see how his dog, when Fry got stuck in the cryopod and was basically there for like thousands of years, how the dog waited patiently for Fry to return, even though he never did. Seymour, and he died there. And people talk about how a dog is extremely loyal, a dog will never betray you, will never abandon you. And Denji is referred to as a dog for a reason. It's not enough that, there are a lot of different animals that you could say are loyal. But Denji is almost loyal to the point where it's a blind loyalty because it's all he's ever known. And you see how people take advantage of that in every way that they can. And I think to an extent Denji knows this, but even he himself is not really aware of why he is as loyal or why he acts the way he does. But usually for Denji, for the loyalty that's given, loyalty is returned. Because even in the episode, if Denji really wanted to try to run away, he could. I mean, he could try to run away if he really wanted to, but he never does. So that really says a lot about him, because you'd think that anyone in his situation would have tried to run at least once. And like the boss was always threatening him. He's like, if you try to run away, we'll kill you. But Denji, not even for a moment, ever looked like he was trying to run in the first place. Even when he was given the debt, and that probably would have been his first instinct was to run. He didn't even try to run. He just accepted his death. So that really says a lot about Denji in terms of not being the type of person to run away from a situation. But anyway, Denji's body, he gets chopped up. Pochita only got chopped in half, and they get thrown into a dumpster and just left there. Denji is dead. However, we see a flashback from Pochita, and essentially what Denji explained to Pochita was that as a devil, Pochita, they need blood to survive, and anyway, Denji kind of figured that the life he lived, he might get killed one of these days, so he told Pochita that if anything ever happened to him, and if he ever died, Pochita could just use his body, reform, take control. If he did so, Denji wouldn't be alive. It would just be Pochita using Denji's body. But he could try to live a normal life, and he wanted Pochita to just live in safety, to live away from being hunted and to die, a normal way. But because of this, Pochita, seeing how far Denji goes for him, he does the same. So essentially what he does is he restores Denji's body, and he restores his consciousness. And instead of taking his body, Pochita becomes Denji's heart. And they make the promise that Pochita will give Denji another life, and Denji will live out his dream. And Pochita, inside of Denji, wants to see Denji live out the dream that they would talk about. The dream of living a normal life and accomplishing all these goals. So because of this, Pochita pretty much helps stitch Denji's body back together. He becomes his heart, and sticking out of the middle of his chest is the ripcord for the chainsaw power. So Denji, he awakens from the trash can. He pretty much speaks telepathically to Pochita, who's inside of him, and he thanks Pochita for giving him a second chance. And now he has a reason to live, which is to live out his dream, to allow Pochita to also be a part of that. Now, this is where we get the first animation of Denji transforming into the Chainsaw Man, and I have to say, the blending between animation and 3D animation, absolutely beautiful. I love the way the transformation works, the sound of the chainsaw, the way the chainsaws look when they're animated. It's really a thing of beauty. Like, you can really feel the intensity of the chainsaws when they're being swung. You see his head transform into like the chainsaw with the middle chainsaw sticking out of the forehead, and the two auxiliary chainsaws that come out of both of his forearms. And he goes to work clearing out all of the zombies. He kills the zombie devil, pretty much slaughters everyone in the room. Now, at the end, we do see the appearance of Makima. She arrives, like in the end of chapter 1. They pretty much arrive because they were going there to kill the zombie devil, but they see that all the zombies, zombie devil, everyone's already been killed. The only one remaining left is Denji in his chainsaw form. Makima, she assessed the situation. She meets Denji, and this is where the two of them meet for the first time, and she gives Denji the choice. She can either kill him now, or he can be her human and pretty much work for her and work for the devil hunting organization. So Denji, he asks one thing. He asks, will there be breakfast? She tells him about the breakfast that they can have, and hearing that, that's all Denji needs, his path to a normal life, and he accepts. Now, I wanted to save this portion to talk about where I think the show will go and what I think they're going to do. Now, it's been confirmed that I guess you can call it season 1, is going to get 12 episodes. Now, looking at episode 1, they covered chapter 1 of volume 1. And there are 6 chapters in volume 1, excuse me. Now, the way the volumes are set up, they could get the first 6 episodes from volume 1. The first 6 episodes will cover volume 1, I imagine. And the next 6 episodes would cover volume 2. So the first 2 volumes would be covered in the first 12 episodes. Now, from there, we don't know where they're going to go with the series. If this is going to be like a Spy X Family thing, where they show the first 12 now, and they show the second half in the springtime, and that'll be season 1. Or if these first 12 episodes will be season 1, and if they get the green light to do more, then we'll just go into seasons 2, and so on and so on. If that's the case, then it might follow the My Hero Academia route, because with My Hero Academia, the first season only had 13 episodes, but every season after that has had 25 episodes apiece. Even with season 6, that's going to have 25 episodes also. So they might go down that road where the first season will only be 12 episodes. It's just something to get you into it. And then when they start covering more material, then they'll get into the longer episodes. Although they might not, because right now, the first portion of the story, or part 1 of Chainsaw Man, officially is only 11 volumes. And the second part of the story just started this summer, the manga anyway, as the manga continues. So the first part of the story in manga form is only 11 volumes. So you don't want to run into a situation where you catch up to the manga, or you cover up so much that you have to take a long hiatus and wait for the story to build up before you animate more. I do think this is going to be a seasonal anime. They might do it 1 year, might take a year off, and then come back and do some more again. So, it's just something that you'll have to see going forward. But all in all, for episode 1, I thought it was really good. A really good adaptation of chapter 1. The animation was outstanding, although I won't actually pretend like I'm a anime connoisseur when it comes to telling good animation. Although I think I've seen enough to know what's good and what's bad. The lighting, the overall shading, the color scheme of the anime, I think is really appealing, because while it does have its bright spots, it has this dark tinge to it. And even in the brightest parts of the day, even when the sun's out, you can still feel the shade behind it all. And for me, I really won't even know what I'm talking about in the grand scheme of things. But truly, I think this is going to be a very good anime. It's definitely going to be in contention for Anime of the Year. In terms of where I think it will rank in terms of all the anime that comes out this year, I think it will definitely be number 1. If not number 1, definitely be in the top 3. It's unique, it's different, it's something all of its own. If you don't mind the excessive violence that comes with it, I think it's going to tell a really good story. And again, I think Denji as a protagonist, he's just someone that stands out among all the others. He's just different. He's not, like Naruto or Deku or Luffy or anyone like that. He doesn't have this big, grand, overarching goal. But for him, overall, it's about living a normal life, and, if he can do some good along the way, then that's what he's going to try to do. But, no man is ever truly good, and no man is ever truly evil. But anyway, this is going to be the end of the first episode review of Chainsaw Man. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of episode 1, if you've seen it, and if you haven't, then go give it a watch. And if I were to recommend reading the manga, I definitely recommend reading the manga. So if you have the chance or the opportunity to read the manga, then definitely do so at my recommendation. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.